Welcome to chapter 3 of the book of 2 Samuel. The house of Saul wars with the house of David. It begins, and there was polemics, war of words, for a poly, a long time, poly, many, in far as a long time, much time, between the house of Saul and between the house of David. And Saul was tribes of Israel, and David was of the tribe of Judah and Benjamin. And the house of David went and strengthened, and the house of Saul went and weakened. And were born to David in Hebron, and we had the map in the last chapter of all these cities, 6 sons. And his firstborn was Amnon, and we learn later Amnon takes Tamar, rapes her, and then Absalom down here kills him. We'll go into that later. So he was born by Ahinoam the Jezreelitess. And his second wife was Chileab, a second son, of Abigail the Carmelitess. And the third was Absalom, son of Maacah, daughter of Thalmai, king of Geshur, and Absalom tries to overthrow David. We'll get into that later. And the fourth was Adonijah, son of Haggith, and he tried to become king when David died. We'll get into that later. Fifth was Shephatiah by Abital, and I don't remember anything about him. And the sixth was Ethream of Eglah, wife of David, nor do I remember anything of him. These were born to David in Hebron. And it came to pass, in the war being between the house of Saul and between the house of David, and these were tribal people, 12 tribes. So much of the Middle East is tribal. If you ever saw the movie, what was it? I forgot his name. Lawrence of Arabia, and the problems with his different Arabian tribes. And so there was going on here also for thousands of years. And so the war was between them, and that Abner was holding rule over the house of Saul. Abner was a general, and he was a strong, powerful man. And he was not the king, though. We'll go do that here a little bit. And to Saul was a concubine, and her name, and the name to her was Rezpha, the daughter of Aiah. And Ishbosheth, son of Saul, he was the king, said to Abner, the general, "Why is it that you enter to the concubine of my father?" And Abner was enraged exceedingly on account of this word by Ishbosheth, that he would insult him, so because Saul was dead and he was helping Ishbosheth. So why should he care? Abner said to him, "Am I a dog's head that I executed today mercy with the house of Saul, your father, and with his brothers?" Poor dog, always in the negative. And with his acquaintances, all the family, and I did not desert to the house of David, that you seek anxiously about me concerning injustice to a woman today. Women were not held in the same way as they are today, more of a lesser person. They, in Levitical laws for sale of women, if they were slaves, they were sold for less, and so forth. You go through the Levitical laws on women, and they were not held up. They did not have equality to men at all. And Abner, thus may God do to Abner, he's saying about himself, and thus may he, God, add to him, that as the Lord swore by an oath to David, that so I should do the same to him in this day. He should swear an oath to remove the kingdom from the house of Saul, and to raise up the throne of David over Israel and over Judah, from Dan until Beersheba. And Dan was the furthest part up north. Beersheba was a city down south in the Negev. And Ishbosheth was not able still to answer Abner's utterance because of the fearing him, the phobe again, the phobia, fearing him, the derivative. And Abner sent messengers to David in Hebron, saying, "You ordain a covenant with me, and behold, my hand is with you to return to you all Israel." And David said, "Well, I will ordain with you a covenant, except one word I ask from you, saying, you shall not see my face if you do not lead Michal, the daughter of Saul," which was his wife, "in your coming to behold my face." And David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, son of Saul, saying, "Give back to me my wife Michal, which I took for 100 foreskins of the Philistines, which he killed." And Ishbosheth sent and took her from her husband, from Phaltiel, son of Laish. Now, how long? Must have been married to her for quite a while. And to lose your wife this way to a stronger man, that's the way it goes. And her husband went with her, going and weeping after her unto Bahurim. And Abner said to him, "Well, go, return." And he returned. And the word of Abner came to the presbyteros, the elders of Israel, saying, this was the people up north where he came from, "Yesterday and the third day before you sought David to reign over you. So now act. For the Lord spoke concerning David, saying, by the hand of my bondman David I will deliver my people, Israel, from out of the hand of the Philistines, and from out of the hand of all his enemies." So Abner's now sticking up for David to the tribes of Israel. And Abner spoke in the ears of Benjamin. And Abner, that's the tribe of Benjamin, and Abner went to speak into the ears of David in Hebron, all as much as it pleased in the eyes of Israel. So he had the backing of all the tribes in Israel to join with David as king. And in the eyes of all the house of Benjamin, which was part of David's realm. And Abner came to David in Hebron, and with him 20 men, not a whole lot. And David made a banquet to Abner and the men with him. And Abner said to David, "Well, I will arise indeed, and I'll go, and I'll gather together all Israel to my master the king. I'll go on leave now, and I'm going to get all these tribes together to come and anoint you, more or less. And I will ordain with you a covenant, and you shall reign over all whom your soul desires." And David sent away Abner, and he went in Irene, peace. Irene, the name Irene means peace. And behold, the servants of David and Joab was David's general, the same as Abner was Saul's general, and then Ishbosheth. So Joab came from an expedition, and they brought many spoils with themselves. So they have a lot of power, bringing all these goods to the people. So what they say has a lot of power behind it, because they're feeding them and giving people all sorts of things and helping the king. So Joab was a powerful man of this family, and the one brother was Asahel, was killed by Abner, as you remember, in the last chapter. And Abner was not with David in Hebron, for David sent him away, and Abner, went in peace. Gets kind of confusing when who the he's are. And Joab and all the military with him came. And they reported to Joab, saying, "Well, Abner, son of Ner, comes to David. And David has sent him, and he went forth in peace. Let him go." And Joab entered to the king. And Joab hated Abner because he killed his brother. And Joab entered to the king and said to him, "What is this you did Behold, Abner came to you, and why have you sent him away? And he's gone forth in peace. Or do you not know that the evil of Abner, son of Ner, that he came to deceive you, and to know your entering and your exiting, and to know altogether as much as you do? And Joab went from David, probably mad, and sent messengers after Abner. And they returned him from the well of Sirah, but David knew it not. He has a plan. Joab has a plan. And Abner returned to Hebron, thinking the king wanted him for something. And Joab turned him from the side of the gate to speak to him, lying in wait. And he struck him there in the flank, in his side, and he died for the blood of Asahel, Joab's brother, his brother. And David heard about these things and said, I am innocent, my kingdom, before the Lord and into the eon of the blood of Abner, son of Ner. Let it arrive upon the head of Joab and upon all the house of his father. And may there not cease to be from out of the house of Joab one having a curse, one having gonorrhea and leprous and holding a stave or a crutch. That means that they're crippled and falling by the broadsword and lacking breads. That was a curse. For Joab and Abishai his brother observed Abner because he killed Asahel their brother in Gibeon in the battle. And it was in a battle. It wasn't murder. And David said to Joab and to all the people with him, tear your clothes and gird on sackcloth and lament before Abner. And King David went behind the bier. They're taking Abner to bury him. And they entombed Abner in Hebron. And the king lifted his voice and wept over the tomb of Abner. Tapho, cenotaph. The taf part comes from that as a cenotaph is a monument for a person that had died, but they're really not buried in that spot. And all the people wept. And the king lamented over Abner. And he said, well, shall Abner die according to the death of Nabal? And Nabal means a fool. He was the husband of the Carmelitess, Abigail, and he was a fool. Should he die as a fool? No, your hands were not tied, nor your feet in shackles. You did not lead as Nabal. You fell in the presence of a son of injustice. Somebody bad killed you. They didn't capture him. He was free. And all the people were brought together to weep for him, for Abner. And all the people came to cause David to eat breads at the wake, still being day. So it's daylight, and they're mourning over Abner and having eulogies and so forth, and eating apparently. But it said David swore by an oath, saying, well, thus may God do to me, and thus may he add yet more, that until the sun should go down, in no way shall I taste bread nor anything. He's not going to eat until supper, evening. And all the people knew, and it was pleasing before them, all as much as the king did in the presence of all the people. Probably a lot of people came down from Israel. And they realized that the king was showing penance, that, he didn't have anything to do with it, and sorry that it all happened. And all the people of Israel knew in that day, the people up north with Abner, that the putting to death of Abner, son of Ner, happened not by the king. And the king said to his servants, do you not know that a leader and a great one has fallen in this day in Israel? And a lot of people are still called Abner. And that I am as a relative today, and one being placed for king. But these men, the sons of Zeruiah, that would have been Joab and his brother, they're hard for me. The Lord should recompense to the one doing the wicked things according to his evil. And in the second chapter of the book of 1 Kings, David, before his death, tells Solomon that after he dies, to get rid of Abner, however he needs to do it. And then the story about Abner, and he grabs a hold of the horns and the altar, and Solomon sends men in there, and they put him to death for the killing the righteous Abner. We'll get into that later when we get into Kings. So now we don't have Abner. The main one fearing in David, in way of David, is Ishbosheth, that son of Saul that was still alive with Abner taking care of him. We'll find out all about that in the next video seminar, Chapter 4. Hope you join us, and God bless.